Callaway PARADYM has totally eclipsed the driver release market this year, and fair play to them, they've done rather well. It's seen big reviewers putting out loads of videos on them and everyone singing high praise for it. But how far has the technology actually come? Because with PARADYM, we are seeing something that is a carbon head and it has a titanium face. I bought this. It's an ERC Fusion. It has a carbon body and it has a titanium face. There are some differences to the PARADYM, and today we're going to find out how much of a difference there is, and actually, if you're not that bothered about new release drivers, should you be buying something that's old and has a little bit of technology in it, or is this totally blowing it out of the water? Let's get stuck in. So the PARADYM boasts quite a lot of technology. It is a first in that we're seeing a fully forged carbon body. Now, what's different about this one to the ERC is that there's no framing around the structure of the head. So with the ERC, we would actually see that if we took it apart, there would be pieces of titanium that are acting almost like a bit like a cage or a frame that the carbon is stuck to. As well with PARADYM, 20 years on now from when the ERC was released, they've been able to take that frame away, so that allows them to move weight around the club head. It allows them to make the driver more stable, ultimately being more forgiving. And also there are other features in place like the forged titanium face that allows it to be mapped with their super AI computer to actually produce the fastest face possible. It's also got jailbreak technology in here, so it's almost like a little wishbone that sits in between and behind the club face that allows the face to flex and be stable at the certain and correct points, again to make it the fastest face possible on mishits and out of the centre. The way they distribute the weight is different. The actual head size is different as well, coming in at 460 cc's. As well, if we look at something like the ERC Fusion here, which, like I say, was released 20 years ago, it's got the graphite body on there, so we see some carbon, which to be fair, the PARADYM looks a lot better now. The top of the PARADYM has this sort of weave-like carbon structure as well. The Fusion actually has that all over it. It looks a lot bolder and more sort of in your face, this weave-like structure, like they're trying to say, yes, we were using carbon, and here it is, we are showing you with it. This is what carbon looks like. But again, that has the structure, and you can almost feel the points, and even the diagram that I've got up on the screen sort of showcasing where I think the frame would be. You can feel those points around the club head. The head itself, 380 cc's, so 80 cc's smaller, so that's obviously going to limit the amount of weight that can be produced, positioned around the parameter of the golf club, leading to lesser forgiveness. But it's all good having all these technologies in the head, but will they actually stack up when we test them for forgiveness, when we test them for distance? Is it that the PARADYM is staggeringly longer? Is it that the forgiveness is unbelievably different? Or are we seeing that actually, if you're a golfer who maybe plays once a week, isn't playing in competitions, isn't really that fussed about having the latest, the greatest technology, this driver at quite a significantly smaller cost, which I'll get to in a little bit, is it worth having something like this? So let's talk about the looks of each driver. Now, if we start with the PARADYMs, I think it's evident that with time and with the evolution of the technology, so have the looks as well. They followed suit. When we look at all three models, whether it's the triple diamond, the X or the standard model, they all look very sleek behind the golf ball. I think the way the carbon and the titanium face now sit with that thinner sort of top line of titanium versus what we would see with the ERC, where it is a little bit thicker. To me personally, it just looks cleaner, it looks sleeker, it looks almost faster nowadays. Obviously, The club head's also got bigger, and as we go through all three models, it's good to see the way that the sort of back of the club is now hugging the ground a little bit more, as where with the ERC, and I think even into like the FT3 and FT5 models, we saw that the back edge was almost up off the ground a little bit more chunkier, a little bit more robust. Even the way the shaft now sort of goes into the head, what we see, obviously the ERC doesn't have the sure fit system, but it just looks cleaner in the way that it goes in. Everything, that would probably be the best word to describe the way these things look now as we've gone through these ages, is that they just look cleaner and sleeker from each one. And I think as well, obviously with the heads getting bigger, the 460cc versus the 380cc, it probably just inspires a little bit more confidence for a lot of golfers as well. I mentioned the sort of backs just hugging the floor a little bit more, but the overall footprint, when you've got a triple diamond versus an X, yes, there is a little bit of a difference there, but even the triple diamond looks a lot bigger than what the ERC does now. That one looks smaller, looks a little bit more sort of chunky, as where this one looks a bit bigger and looks a little bit sleeker around the edges. Next thing we have to look at is how they feel, how they sound as well when we're hitting them, because one thing that's noticeable when you do go to the ERC versus the Paradigm is the sort of sound of the ERC is a little bit more pingy, a little bit more high in tone, as where the Paradigm now is sounding a little bit more solid. It almost sounds a bit like an old persimmon wood. It's got the sort of thud, and it sounds powerful, it sounds strong when you're hitting it. Not to say that this one doesn't sound powerful, but there was definitely an element when I was hitting it out on the golf course as well, that there was that sort of higher pitched sort of noise from it. Definitely feels still good. I wouldn't say for 20 years that they've been able to change a massive amount of feel and sound, but almost just fine-tune them a little bit. This one though doesn't quite have that. No, I don't have quite the love as I do for the Paradigm sound as I would the ERC. I knew that one might have twisted my melon. That felt good. So I think if you were on a buying decision of looks and feel, if you're not bothered about it, I don't think it really matters to you, as where just going back that 20 years, they just don't look as clean and look as sort of futuristic, I would say. The new ones just have that sort of futuristic, modern, sleek look about them, as where 20 years ago it just looks a little bit clumsy and a little bit big, which is surprising because I remember having one of these drivers and it looked like something from the future when it came out, but it just shows how far we've actually come. Even on the bottom of the club, the sort of detail, the presentation, obviously it's got 20 years of wear and tear on this one, so it does look a little bit battered, but even then it's not got that big wow factor on it. I think obviously the wow factor was probably this carbon on the back of the driver. So we've come out to the course, and now I just want to get a little bit of an idea of how they perform out on the golf course. Obviously in the simulator there's no real pressures in there, there's no trees, there's no trouble, there's no water. So I want to go ERC, I want to go the normal Paradigm, and I want to go the X, and just see, even if I can try and get a little bit of a misstrike, how they actually favour when they are here on the course. So we'll go standard Paradigm to start and then see how it performs up against this retro bad boy. Normal Paradigm. It just looks like twice the size. I still can't believe how different they look in shape and size. Right, come on, at the hut. Let's see if we can get some. Let's get a centred one first, and then we'll try a little toe and a heel. Well, we're not getting much better than that down the centre. That'll be interesting to see how far the RC gets next to that one, because pretty well struck. A tiny bit of heel in there, but it's down there. Let's see if we can get a tiny bit toe orientated on this one and see how much it affects the flight. What's the forgiveness like? Well, that was definitely toey. It's dead straight, but in the trees. Well, actually, it's just out of the trees. You can't really make it out there, but you can see where the line for the tee was struck, so the ball was somewhere around here. It didn't look drastically different to the first one, which was out of the middle. It just started a bit right and pretty much stayed there, but distance-wise, looks pretty similar. All right, let's see if we can get a little heel involved. Oh, that is pretty much out the shaft. It's just right at the bunkers. Dropped dramatically in distance, but actually looking at that flight, that's where the ball was struck there. And it's actually, you know, the best part of 240, 250 down there in the fairway. So we're gonna go for the X now, which is the sort of higher handicapper draw biased one. So the ultimate forgiveness machine, this one should be. Looking at it down behind the ball, it looks a tiny bit larger, but do you know what I do like? It doesn't look horrifically offset from like drivers of yesteryear to all the way up to now, even when you used to see the kink in the neck. The actual the look of this club for a draw biased club or a more forgiving club doesn't look that bad, to be fair. So let's see how this one performs. Let's see if we can get a nice centered strike to start with. It's drawing. Definitely more draw on that one, just over the trap. Felt good, went a good distance. You would definitely want to see that flight if you were a slicer that had that turn on it, which we would want. Right, so let's go a little toey. Let's see if we can get some toe orientation. Oh yeah. I mean, it's out there, it's flying, it's pretty much on top of the other golf ball. A little bit lower and a little bit more divey, but you can see just where the ball was struck, quite close to almost the edge of the golf ball here. You can see those little dimple marks. And not a horrific flight. I think that's the big positive of golf clubs nowadays. We're definitely seeing that, you know, the game's still the game, but on those off-centered strikes, you get away with a lot more, as where I'm expecting when we do get into the RC, if I get that much toe strike, we're going to see it really dive. I think I remember playing as a kid, you know, and if you did get it toey, it was a real diving hook where I don't really see that shot anymore. I mean, that one's gone probably about 230, 240. Like, I've nearly missed that. Literally nearly missed it. It's just next to the traps. It's not even on there because I hit it about here, that one. That was shocking, and it's still got a fly. It still went. Like I say, it's that level of forgiveness has just got greater and greater. Right, time to try the ERC and see what that's like. Straight away, you know, as I alluded to before, that smaller head size, it almost looks like a mini driver. Looks so different. Let's see how this one performs. I think distance-wise, we're going to be not too far away, but it's this forgiveness aspect that intrigues me a bit. God, that looks like a P. That is insane. Oh, take my money. Straight down the middle. If you hit it every day like that, where's that? It's a bit short of the PARADYM. Centre strike, you can just make the dimple marks out there. Just out of the meat. That felt great. That was like going down memory lane, but now's the real test. That felt good. It popped up in the air. Flight was lovely. What's it going to do now from a toe and a heel though? Even now, when I'm thinking of trying to toe this, the actual area of the toe is so small compared to those PARADYMs. The actual toe on the PARADYM X and normal looks about the same size as the sweet spot on this. I feel like I could almost like toe shank this, it's that small. Oh wow, well, that's actually done all right. It's moving a hell of a lot more though. Oh my God, that's like 60 yards off the centre of the fairway. The others missed the fairway by maybe 5 yards. That one's seriously left. It got the flight. It actually got up there. It had some flight on it. It has lost some distance. It wasn't as aggressive as I was expecting to see, but it's definitely moved a lot more. Oh wow, and that's got serious shape on it as well. That's into the trees. Oh, and it's dropped. So that one's probably only covered 200 yards at a push. It had a lot more curve, and you could almost see the spin on it. It was just climbing and climbing and climbing and didn't get that distance. So that's 3 there with each driver, and it was noticeable how much more shape I was getting from the ERC compared to the Paradyms. A little bit of a lack of distance when it was stuck out of the toe and the heel, but for me it was more that curvature. And you know, one of the things that is talked about now is how hard it is to shape the golf ball. So we are seeing, you know, if you were looking for more forgiveness, if you were going to go and buy, you know, a new driver versus something that's 20 years old, that is one thing to bear in mind, that you're probably going to struggle keeping the golf ball as straight as you would with something that's a little bit more modern. So let's talk price difference between these clubs, because we all know that the Paradym is expensive. This comes in at RRP of £529. That's a lot of money. I think that's roughly round about $600 that's costing for my US friends. As where my ERC Fusion, I went onto a local second-hand club sales emporium, known as Golf Clubs for Cash. I got this one for $31.99, but I actually got a £5 discount token for being a first-time customer. So it actually only cost me £26.99. There's golf gloves that cost more than this driver. Yeah, golf gloves that cost more than that driver. So in difference, there's £500 difference. So it's a serious price. Now, I know a lot of people watching are probably maybe not super keen golfers wanting that brand new, latest, greatest technology every single time. And something like this, they'll just look at it and go, well, it's a driver. It's going to help me start to learn how to hit driver. That will do. As well. Some of my viewers I know like the latest, the greatest, and they want that new release every time it's coming out, and you know, that's fine depending on who you are and what your budget is. That's totally up to you. But from the playability tests that we've just seen, we already know that the Paradym does actually perform a little better. Is it £500 better? That's for you to decide. But now let's get into the simulator and actually find out what the distance gap is over 20 years, because at £500 I'm expecting quite a lot of distance to come from the Paradym. Just as a side note, I was only able to get the ERC Fusion Plus, which is actually the illegal version. So it will be interesting to see how close in distance this gets, because the COR is not as the same as this now. But being 20 years old, it was hard to get my hands on a legal one. But let's see that, you know, 20 years on, does this still knock it out of the park even compared to something like this? Right, let's go Paradym first. I think predictions wise, I reckon Paradym is, I'm going to go 16 yards longer on average. ERC time. Let's see what this does. That's just dropped out of the sky. Tell you what, if you like those last two, I have caught so pure. 2 at 8 for that one. They get up there. They get up there. The problem is those mishits. So we've hit the balls in the sim and we've done our distance test. We know that the PARADYM took it on the playability and the forgiveness test. The looks and feels and sounds are totally personal, but distance, the PARADYM came in at 288 yards of carry, as where the Fusion came in at 268 yards of carry, which is 20 yards difference, so it's a yard per year. Now it is interesting though, when I buttoned this Fusion, when I caught some like absolutely out of the sweet spot, they went the same as the PARADYM when I hit that well. We had some at the sort of high to mid 290s and the high 280s as where we saw that as well from the PARADYM. So I think the big change in these clubs and where they're really evolving and what we're seeing now is that, as I said when we were doing the playability test, it is harder to hit the ball with a lot of curvature nowadays. Your mishits are rewarded so much more when you don't quite get this one. And even when I was doing the distance test, there was a few that I thought, oh, that felt just a little bit off, and that number was plummeting, as where a few that I hit with the PARADYM, even playability or doing the distance test, when I found them a little bit toey or a little bit heely, I wouldn't go, oh, there was a dramatic difference between those. They were still getting out there. So interesting little test, a fun one that I just wanted to do there. And I think, like I say, the big takeaway is that, yes, they will go the distance on good hits, but it's that forgiveness aspect that's really changing now. And then, obviously, is £500 worth it getting that forgiveness for you, depending on your level of play and what you're looking from a driver? That is up to you to decide. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I think that was really, really fun, that one, and it was a great to take a little trip down memory lane with this driver. It was definitely one of my favourites in the past. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See you in another one. Make sure you subscribe for plenty more.